Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Mike, and this is RetroGameFix.com Serial at Night podcast, episode number 37. 37 of these guys, man, rolling solo. Actually, let's get, so I was about to give you, what we're going to talk about today, but first, let's get the housekeeping out of the way. I always appreciate subscribers on YouTube, youtube.com/RetroGameFix, twitter.com, whack RetroGameFix, questions at RetroGameFix.com, or 678-995-5103. So anyway, what I wanted to hit on tonight is this topic of console wars, because I don't really feel like console wars are a bad thing if we're talking about console wars in the right sense, right? So you have console. So let's define console wars. Let's start there, right? So console wars, depending on which way you look at it, there's a business side of it and there's a consumer side of it. On the consumer side of it, we continuously read about console wars on the internet is basically gamers that own one console or another and want to justify that purchase, or fans of one console or another that want to back up their brand loyalty for said company, whether it's Sony, Nintendo, Microsoft, specifically this generation, Microsoft or Sony. Then on the other hand, you have a console war at the business level, right? Which is Microsoft versus Sony, who are trying to move units to position themselves as number one in the market and own number one market share. And I feel like you can talk about both intelligently while still mentioning the term console wars without acting like you're pandering to the console war. And so what I mean by that is I feel like as an adult, that I don't feel like as a podcaster that I need to continue to pander to the 13 or 14-year-olds. I know we always use 13 or 14-year-olds as teenagers. Hell, let me even throw it out there. I don't want to offend a 13 or 14-year-old. We don't need to pander to the moronic internet that wants to continue complaining about which box is better than the other. And this is the only time I'm going to spend in this podcast on that. So I'm going to be very succinct when I say, as an adult, I don't give a fuck what plastic box you choose to play games on, whether it's a PC, a Wii, PlayStation, Xbox, Game Boy, Game Gear, Vita, fucking PlayStation, phone, Android, iPhone. I don't care where you're playing your goddamn games. I don't give a shit. I'm going to be real clear about that right now. And I think arguing about it is stupid. I'm just going to be blunt about it. It's fucking dumb. If you can only have one console, pick the console, enjoy it, and have fun. End of story. If you want more than one console, I don't know. Can't afford it? I'm sorry. I get it. They're expensive. If you can, buy a second one. I don't know what to tell you. I don't care where you're playing your games. That said, the console war on the business level is I'm going to use the term good for gamers, right? It's okay to use the term console wars when we're talking about the business side of the console war. Because look, it's not like Microsoft wants to be outsold 2-1 this generation, right? But Phil Spencer, head of Xbox, continues to come out and say things that are good for gamers, right? There is a way to be competitive in the business landscape while being accommodating to your prospects and potential customers. You can be competitive on a console war standpoint and still acknowledge the fact that people can't own of other systems. You can still be accommodating in your messaging to say, hey, if you're having fun with your PlayStation, have fun with your PlayStation, right? Or vice versa. Sony could do it too. Here's the difference. Sony doesn't need to at this point because they're the leader. They're the market leader. They're the mindshare leader. But at the end of the day, we keep saying competition is good for gamers. But no one wants to say the console wars are good for gamers because a bunch of jackasses on the internet continue to use the term console wars to argue about where they spent their $200 to $400. As an adult, I don't give a shit where you spent your $200 to $400. I really don't. But as an adult, what does fascinate me is where Microsoft is spending their $200 to $400 million to market these products, or where Sony is spending their $200 to $400 million or more to market these products. The business side of the console wars, and I'm going to continue to use that term, is fascinating to me. This generation, actually, let's not hit this generation. This started. The funny part is when you look back at Sega versus Nintendo back in the 90s, they didn't even want to acknowledge that one or the other was a viable option. It was Sega does what Nintendo don't. Nintendo didn't so much they didn't really rebuttal in that fact because they had the market share, right? And so they just continued pushing out great games. But Sega was able to really take a chunk out of that mind share and that market share. And good for them, right? That was good business. And it worked for a while. And then the marketing started to fall flat and you know, the rest is history. Sega's no longer around. People could sit here and be like, well, Nintendo's no longer around either. I'm not going to get into all that. So we fast forward to this generation. Microsoft comes out of the gate. Their messaging misses. Sony at that point had stayed pretty silent. They see Microsoft's messaging missed. So Sony comes in and delivers a message that isn't about being the center of your living room. Sony delivers a message like a good marketing department would probably do and say, we are about the games. We are going to deliver great games. And the funny part about that is I don't think either one of the consoles has done better at delivering great games than the other. And that's what's so funny about the console wars. It's what marketing department is better. You can fire back to Sony's marketing campaigns with the PlayStation 3. I don't even remember what them creepy ass ads were. There was some creepy ads that had like people in straitjackets and like these closed rooms before they finally hit on, Play Beyond. But what I'm getting at is there's this competitive balance that happens with every manufacturer of any great product. Whether it's Ford and Chevy or Microsoft and Sony, or in a way, Microsoft and Apple. The list could go on and on. Samsung versus LG. Vizio versus Insignia. Again, the list can go on and on. But at the end of the day, these are business campaigns in order to try to position your product as the product that you need to have. This generation, Sony has done a better job at doing that. But Microsoft, on the other hand, is now coming out and changing their stance and saying, hey, we want to have cross-platform play between the systems online. We want to, we're releasing systems that can market to all demographics. You want 4K output? Here's a 4K output Blu-ray player in the Xbox S. Here's a Sony Scorpio we're going to be talking about. You don't care about any of that? Keep your Xbox One. Here's some deals on that. Here's games included. On the other hand, Sony doesn't need to do anything, which is awesome to watch. Right? Sony's just sitting back and saying, let's see if all of those moves move the needle. Right? But at the end of the day, with Microsoft making these moves, gamers win. And it's not about what is Microsoft doing. Who cares what Microsoft... I don't care. Back to the console war aspect of it, I don't care what they're doing. What I do know is options are good for consumers. Options are good. Right? And it's funny to see Sony, for me, sit back and still not talking about the Neo, still not talking about the Xbox. Because much like Sony did out of the gate, when Xbox launched first with the Xbox One and Sony countered with a lower price tag, Sony is sitting back on the Neo, and them specs got leaked, and Microsoft has to be aggressive with their messaging and come out and start to get content out there for mindshare. I wouldn't be surprised if Sony is sitting back just to see what kind of hardware they're dropping in order to match it. And people can say, oh, the production costs, they already have to have these systems in place. Nope. No, they don't. This is not proprietary hardware like it used to be. It's just not. Right? These are essentially off-the-shelf PC parts that they're melding into boards in order to fit into custom boxes. This isn't anything crazy right now. So Microsoft is using this time, in my opinion, to try to just get ahead of it and keep that Xbox brand out front. And I think they're doing a great job of it. That said, I still don't think Sony needs to say anything. And I don't know if I was Sony, if it would be smart to say anything. And that's the kind of stuff that, I love the business aspect of that cat and mouse. That game they play with each other. And so to hit on something I said earlier, there are two really great traits that make a business. Being a competitor and being accommodating. Right? If you are competitive in the landscape that you are working in, you want to beat every one of your competitors. You want to kick their ass. You want to. But in the same token, in order to do that, you need to be accommodating to your customer. Because if you're not accommodating your customer, you're not being competitive. You're just not. And so Sony's in this position where they are being accommodating and they're marketing their message correctly. Sony doesn't need to do anything right now. Microsoft, on the other hand, continues to come out and try to get the messaging right that they got wrong from Jump Street that Sony did get right. And that messaging was, we are about the gamers. And Microsoft is still trying to prove that. What else they're doing is also trying to appeal to the PC gamers, which in my opinion is working for me. And they're trying to give people options. But again, Sony doesn't need to say shit. Sony's already accommodating. Sony's already got 40 million PlayStation 4s in They're delivering more games than most households are going to buy. And if you think Microsoft doesn't want a chunk of that, at a business level, you're fooling yourself. Because they do. So I was saying, well, how can we get there? We've got 300 million plus Windows 10 installs. That's how we can get there. We're already in 300 million plus households via Windows 10. Of course they're going to leverage that. Why wouldn't they? And this isn't to sound Microsoft-centric. The only reason I'm focusing on Microsoft is because they're behind and they're making moves because they need to. There's no reason right now for Sony to make a strategic change when their strategy is already working. Sony's strategy is already working. It continues to work. Microsoft's strategy out of the gate didn't work, and they need to shift, and they need to change the perspective of their console and of their company as a gaming, as a relevant gaming company. And so that's what they're doing. They're looking at it and saying, we have 300 million plus Windows installs. We have 20 million Microsoft Xbox Ones in homes. There's a demand for 4K playback for Blu-rays alone, which I would remind you, the PlayStation 2 did. The DVD was a Trojan horse to get PlayStation 2s in homes. They're getting that out of the gate in August. So in August, if you want 4K Blu-ray playback, your cheapest and not cheapest, but your most valuable option is I can get a 4K Blu-ray player for $400 and it's an Xbox, just like PlayStation 2 did. Right? And then next year they follow it up with Scorpio. They follow it up with Xbox Play Anywhere. They are out in front of this and they are vocal about it. And they're still behind. And that's why they're making moves. And again, I don't have a lot to say. Sony's done everything perfect so far. If you could, I think Sony is probably exceeding their own expectations, and I think they've even come out and said that. I mean, I feel like as far as business, marketing, and branding goes, the Xbox and the PlayStation war, console war at the business level before people get pissed, can be case studies for branding and marketing that can be, the concepts can be applied to any brand or company moving forward that finds themselves in a similar position. And again, it's fascinating to me. I love it. I love those aspects of business. And I'm not sitting here trying to say I know everything about it. I don't. And that's why I reach out to other podcasts and you know, people on Twitter and other companies that might, because it's just that aspect of it is crazy to me. And so I'm excited. And like I said, you know, we use, as gamers, I'm not going to engage in where you spent your money. It doesn't mean that's the best place to game for me. Where you spend your money is the best game to play for you. If you need to prove it to people, you need to go back and rethink some shit. But here's the thing. It doesn't change the fact that from a business and marketing perspective, that this stuff is not fun to talk about. Console exclusivity, timed exclusives, market position, mind share. All of this stuff is crazy to me. And you got Phil Spencer on Twitter being very accessible, very candid, right? Again, Sony doesn't really need to be. Sony is very accessible, I feel like, but not as candid. And it's very clear that Phil is a gamer, and he's trying to... Phil's the head of Xbox right now for a reason, because he's a gamer. And I feel like if Xbox brand takes Phil's personality and runs with it, that brand's going to be in a good position. And again, that's good for gamers. Competition is good for gamers. And I just feel like we need to stop getting hung up on this term console wars because of a bunch of morons on the internet that want to justify their $300 purchase. I'm done with it. But I'm not going to stop talking about the console war at a business level. I'm not. Because there's a lot to learn from it, from multiple avenues. And so it is what it is, right? I mean, you sit there and you can read, tweets from major publications. Hey, PlayStation gamers, you're in for a treat. You're getting access to this, or hey, the timed exclusive is going to come up. Hey, gamers, you better get your hands on it because it's a great game. That stuff doesn't mitigate the conversation about console wars. It promotes it. We can sit here and say that the console wars are dumb at the consumer level, and I think they are, because I think people need to just fucking buy what they buy and be comfortable with it. But let's not sit here and act like, in a roundabout way, that it's also not being facilitated by gaming media and even at some level the companies. I mean, Sony's facilitated console war stuff. I mean, right out the gate at A3 with, this is how you trade your games. This is how you borrow your games, right? When Microsoft was doing the always online thing. And again, that's knowing your audience and marketing to your audience and accommodating your audience and being competitive. Again, it goes back to the competitive landscape and the accommodating landscape in order to market to your audience. It's not a difficult concept. It's not a difficult concept to understand, but it's a ridiculously difficult concept to execute. Which we've seen with the console wars. And that's why I love to talk about it. Because in looking in the rear view, everything, in hindsight, everything is really clear. Well, Microsoft shouldn't have did this, or the PlayStation 3, Sony should have did this, or, well, the Wii U, I don't really have a lot of excuses there, but I love my Wii U because I've got a billion fucking great games on it. But it's that competitive and accommodating balance to market to your potential customers that creates one company being ahead almost 2-1 in the console race. And again, I don't care where anyone listening to this podcast plays their games, but I do love to talk about the business aspect of it. So anyway, I wanted to get that off my chest, and I'm going to be talking more about this moving forward. Maybe not on Serial Nights. Maybe I'll write a little bit about it, but you can talk console wars as an adult without having to acknowledge the fact that people are constantly trying to justify their purchase on the internet by arguing in comment sections or, whatever. Yeah, it doesn't need to be a thing. So, anyway, that's Serial at Night, and my name is Mike, and I will talk to you later. See ya.